I get a lot of people asking me how we were blessed to walk away from corporate America in our early 30s. Well, listen, I don't want to keep that a secret. I want to share it with the world. And so maybe you're listening to this podcast and you're trying to figure out, how do I even get started on my journey of entrepreneurship and getting to a level of freedom? Well, text the word freedom to 737-777 9909. Enter your information in, and we look forward to sharing some information with you. A proven system with small overhead, right? That you can do part-time, spare time, right from the comfort of your home, and have amazing mentors, coaches, and a community of entrepreneurs who are willing to support you and help you on your journey to freedom. Welcome to Code Freedom. I'm your host, Eddie Bales. Have you ever felt stuck? Have you ever felt like there's got to be more than life than the reality that you see every day? Tune in weekly, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays as we crack the codes to freedom in every area of your life. Welcome to Code Freedom. This is Eddie Bales, your host, and this is episode 50, and I'm really excited because I have a special guest, and this gentleman was my economics professor 20 years ago, and that was when I first started as a serious entrepreneur, and he had a very instrumental part in my development in those early years, especially being my professor. And so we're just going to have a quick conversation in this episode, and I want you guys to hear it. But who is Dr. Curtis Haynes Jr.? Well, he still teaches at Buffalo State College in Buffalo, New York, but he studied economics in Happy Valley at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, during the Camelot years. That's where he received his PhD in 1993. He's also studied epistemology with Resnick and Wolf, and Black political economy with Lloyd Hogan. And this gentleman has done so many different things. I mean, he has a passion for the graduate student organization, the Third World Caucus, and he's into very cool things like Goju Ryu karate, right, of Eastern thought, and especially Taoism. And so he's just got such a broad range of things that he's done. He's received both community and campus recognition, and also was voted 3 times as Instructor of the Year by the BSC Student Government Association. In 2010, he was also appointed to the City Council representing the Ellicott District, Buffalo's most radically, ethnically, and economically diverse council district. He also served for one very eventful year, right? He's published in many areas of Black political economy and cooperative economics. The pinnacle of his scholarship is currently being organized in the unpublished Journey of Economic and Spiritual Man, and treatise in political economy, economics and applied psychology, and associated workbook. In the late 90s, he also was with a scholar activist, co-founded a $400,000 HUD-funded community outreach partnership center, now defunct, right? He's a director for the Center for Economics and Education at Buffalo State, charged with the mission of popularizing prosperity economics. In 2004, he founded the Conscious Investment Group. 2014, the Mondragon Village Association, and in 2018, the CIG Leadership Academy and Community Building Economics. And also, he believes in the 64 arts and likes to play chess and the clarinet. So this gentleman has such a very insightful background. Please help me welcome Dr. Curtis Haynes. Well, welcome to Code Freedom. I'm your host, Eddie Bales. This is episode 50. I can't believe we're at 50 episodes already. Just started this podcast in January, but I'm so excited because I have one of my mentors, right? One of the people that really set me on track for where I'm going and where I'm going today. And so I just want to bring him to you all. I want you guys to get a flavor of what I've been blessed to experience over the years. And his name is Dr. Curtis Haynes out of Buffalo, New York. He's a professor and he's doing some amazing things, even outside of being a professor. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Very appreciative, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you because I mean, you really had an instrumental part of my journey on my journey of wealth because you always need mentors and coaches. I always talk about that, and it was so awesome for me. And I'll be honest, for a couple of reasons. Number one, you broke things down so simplistic and basic, but also you were African American, so I was like, oh, I'm vibing already because it was cool to have a African, not that anyone else was bad, but I could just relate to you a lot better.
Yeah.
So it was awesome to have you as my professor.
Okay, and I think it was likewise, right? I think that I don't know when were we together? What years were those?
That was 2002 to 2004.
Okay. All right, so that was in that time period. I wasn't sure I was going to be staying in Buffalo, right? I came in the '90s, and I was like, most people say, people go through Buffalo, nobody stays, right? But I'm a Buffalonian by choice, right? And the reason I ended up at Buffalo State College in the Department of Economics and Finance was that at the time when I was on the job market. Right, straight out of college, I went to the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. That's where I got my PhD. Right, but straight out of college, the niche that Buffalo State College had for me was that the president at the time, F.C. Richardson, right. He in the college, he and the college had this urban mission. Right. And so, with the various places that I considered going to, tapping into this urban mission was one of the reasons I came to Buffalo. Right. And, and you alluded to you being an African-American and having a sensitivity to an African-American professor. Right. And again, you alluded to is not just because African-American, but you could relate. Right. And so, part of the reason you relate is the reason I was able to relate is because, my work, right, was really built around trying to identify and understanding the condition and the socioeconomic conditions of the African American, which I consider myself as an African American. And so when I came to Buffalo State College, right, I was a theoretician. Right. And I was all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to do some applied stuff. Right. And I think that when we came into each other's lives, right, I had already participated. We talked about the attempt to build a community-owned supermarket on the east side of the city. And that was a real, the market was called Our Market, OUR, Our Market, right? And it was, we had a collection of scholar activists from Buffalo State College, and I was one of them. And we got a grant. We got a grant for about $500,000 to, it was a COPSI grant, Community Outreach Partnership Center grant, right? But in the end, right, the community-owned supermarket it didn't get off the ground, right? And initially I was even though we had a lot of community support, right? We had like maybe about 10,000 signatures or something like that of people who were interested in this community-owned supermarket. And at the time it was a food desert, right? Right on the corner of Fillmore and Ferry in Buffalo, East Side. Right. And we even had people who actually paid like $25 to be a member of this co-op, even before the co-op existed. Right. But from my perspective, I know we only have a few minutes here. Right. So, but for political reasons and what have you. Right. The initiative kind of changed form. And in the end, we ended up getting a private supermarket over on Jefferson, right? So that supermarket, that Tops, that showed up on Jefferson, that was in part of that initiative. But I was highly sensitive to, like all this money came in, this $500,000 came in, right? And it's like one thing about grant money is you got to spend it, right? But the data that we used was, a significant part of that data that we used was connected to the east side of the city, right, and some of the most poverty ridden zip codes. And so, but in the end, that $500,000, it ended up staying on campus. It created some salaries for a few people, but no significant change in the community, right? And so I was kind of like dejected about that. And then, when you and I met, right, I think we were like, did you participate in the stock market stuff that we did? I know you participated in the savings circle, right?
Yeah, so we had the savings circle and we did some teaching on the cash flow game. So we
Okay,
went
yeah.
to different places and taught that. And then I remember you even taught about how what you're talking about is how all the funds go outside of the city. And
Mhm.
your goal was to bring them in the city. I mean, I still remember that. And that was like 20 years ago.
Yeah,
And what I admired about that was you took it past just being a professor. You were really trying to make an impact and make a change economically in the
yeah.
city and especially in the urban community. So that's what I really, really admired about that and about you.
All right. Well, so you while we were off camera, or off audio, you did ask me about, kind of the stuff that I'm doing right now. So, but real quick, meeting you and a lot of the young men of your generation, right? Like I think our current mantra is building 7 generations into the future, starting with our own, right? And so the concept of generations, it could be like life generations, but like for me, it was kind of like I'm guessing you might have been the second generation, right? Right, in terms of people who are in my life that I influence and you guys influenced me, right? And so the people I'm working with right now is the 7th generation, right? So they're building off of what we're doing right now is building off of the kind of relationships that I built with you and other folks before you. But what was critical, like when I came to Buffalo, and I think that like which would appeal to me about you also was that like when I came to Buffalo, I was clear that the young African American male students, particularly those, I mean, a lot of them became attracted to economics, right, because of me and because of the conversations that they had with me. But what I noticed was that a lot of the young Black men that were in my life at that time period, late 90s, early 2000s, right, they were very entrepreneurial, like yourself, right? I mean, everybody's entrepreneurial, and the economics of being entrepreneurial is that, there are barriers to entry into the mainstream labor markets, right? Race and class barriers to entry, socioeconomic barriers to entry, and I think that's kind of ingrained, right? African American male, women too, right? But again, my in terms of how I was interacting, it was the African American male, and their allies, right? But it was kind of like it was clear that some of my students were getting these degrees in economics, right? But there was barriers to entry in the labor market. And so they became entrepreneurial. And so what I decided that same time period when we were doing the savings circle, right, when we were doing the cash flow game, is that I had to step away from just being a professor and a teacher to being a mentor, right? And to be a mentor, you had to be like been there, done that, right? And that's kind of where I'm at. I've been there, done that, right? I moved. I still teach at Buffalo State College, right? But as you alluded to, even 20 years ago, right, my greatest desire for impact was off of the campus, in the community. And so where I'm speaking to you from right now is the Leadership Academy in Community Building Economics. And it's an innovation center, and it's a membership organization. And I think you would appreciate one of our mantras. Like I said, one of our mantras is building 7 generations into the future, starting with our own. right? Because I mean, and it's like, well, you know this, right? I mean, you practice this. I mean, you could tell somebody about your truth with a little t, your personal truth, and your vision about accumulating wealth in a socially conscious and a spiritually conscious way, right? That's one thing, or you could demonstrate it, right? And a lot of times, my generation before, right? I mean, we were talking about, we shall overcome, right? And we were talking about, like the externally outside of ourselves and the impact of this, of race and class on ourselves and our communities. And going back to what I learned and what actually that got me to where I'm at right now with the academy, is that initially, I was kind of like, it was their fault, right? The reason we didn't get the community-owned supermarket, it was the fault of the local city administration, right? The local council member, right? The government, right? And I was kind of bitter about that. But as I grew, right, as I grew as a man, right, I learned to take responsibility. We weren't ready, right? And so coming back to today in the 21st century, right, is again, the idea is that what we is time that we had to demonstrate, right? We had to demonstrate our truths of like walking the walk, the same way that we talk. But yeah, and we're, so I'll stop right there. Let me give you a chance to talk if you want to say something.
Oh no, that's good. I mean, it's very impactful that you just had that mindset, and we do have to look inside. They say your words speak so loud, I can't hear what your accent speaks so loud, I can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And sometimes people just need to see that you're about what you're really about. And like you said, to be a mentor, you want to be able to demonstrate. And I love what you're doing with the community and just saying, look, I'm going to start something and I'm going to affect change. And even having the foresight to think 7 generations down. Most people, they can't even get past their own generation.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you're already thinking like, how can I impact generations to come? That's what this is all about. It's freedom for people to have that kind of freedom, not just today, but for tomorrow as well, building a legacy.
well, I mean, you might have called it foresight, right? But I mean, it I was blessed that I'm an OG, right? One of the original knowledge age workers, right? And so I was getting paid to think, right? I was getting paid to like spend a lot of intellectual energy on understanding the economy in general, right? But particularly the uniqueness of the Black population in the United States of America, both nationally and internationally, right? So I was, I think that my decision to come to Buffalo and to Buffalo State College, right, it really opened the doors and allowed me to spend a lot of intellectual energy understanding the socioeconomic condition of Black America in relationship to a broader America, in relationship to the global economy as a whole. And what I was trained in, and what motivated me initially was to understand, like why was the socioeconomic conditions of Black communities, particularly ghettoized communities, so different than other communities, right? When I was a graduate student, I was a graduate student, and as well, I could tell your audience, right? My father was in the Air Force, so I grew up in the military. And growing up in the military, I had a chance to travel around the world. I went to high school. I was born in England, right? I went to travel different places in the United States, different military bases. High school in Germany, and took my first college class in Spain. Right. And so culturally, like as we're young kids, right, you try to figure out a way to fit in. Right. And so I adopted a culture of as a African American youth, right, culturally, right. When I went to the University of Massachusetts, I became more politically orientated, highly influenced by the Black nationalist kinds of thinking, right. But as a graduate student, I was like, well, why is it that, where I live in Springfield, Massachusetts, the Forest Park area, right? What primarily Black, right? A huge amount of poverty. I get on the bus, go to UMass, right? And it's like the vibration changes, right? As does the complexion of the population, right? And it's like, well, why, right? And so I was studying that, why did it exist? And so by the time you and I met, it was like, I realized that part of that, right, it was a long history of, being free men and women on the African continent, right, forcefully taken from the land by marauders, right, and put in chains, and not easily, right. They're put in chains, right. I mean, some people say, like, up to over 100 million people lost their lives in the slave trades, in the Middle Passage, and everything that's associated with it. But clearly, right, it's chattel slavery was so detrimental to the human soul, right, that, and then, having to fight that and liberate yourself from that, and then find yourself in a new form of oppression, where, the sharecropping era of the U.S. South, right, or even down in Brazil or in the Caribbean, right, where, separate and unequal Jim Crow laws, the Black codes, right, and then by the time we get fully fledged into the capitalist economy in the 1960s, because really the civil rights movement was the end of the sharecroppers, got into the U.S. economy, the industrial economy. The U.S. industrial economy was losing its edge, so that people in the early 1900s with a minimal education were able to get good jobs at the factories. Over here in Buffalo at Bethlehem Steel. But by the time the 60s, the 70s, 80s came around, those jobs didn't exist. But the socioeconomic condition of the African Americans who left the U.S. South, going to urban communities around the country, the jobs started disappearing. But you still had to put food on the table, right? And who stepped in? Well, in some of our communities, right? We had the drug dealers stepped in, right? And then we got the prison industrial complex, right? And so all of that, right? And so I studied that, and now through my understanding of Black political economy, I have a strong understanding of the socioeconomic condition of the Black American, the African American, locally, nationally, and internationally. And now that I have that strong understanding, it's like, okay, well, what's the next stage, right? Well, with that strong understanding, it's like, well, what are the solutions? Okay. And so what my work is designed to, like, pretty much is to transition, right? Is, as you alluding to, like the work I'm doing here at the Academy, is that, I was trained in economic theory. I studied policy, and right now I'm dealing with economic practice. And the economic practice is built around the kind of stuff that you're talking about and the kind of stuff you live, economics of abundance, right? Because again, like when I was blaming other people for our weakness, it's like, okay, I had to understand that, no, we were weak, right? And, it's like you could teach somebody the skills of cooperation, but if you don't have the self-confidence, right? If you're filled with fear, doubt, and uncertainty, right? If you don't have the confidence of doing things, on your own, right? No matter what tools you have in your hand, you're not going to be able to fulfill the project. And so I had a level of insecurity, right? The people we worked with, but it was, it was a heavy lift too, right? So I'm not, I ain't crying about it. It was a heavy lift, but so now I have a very strong positioning myself in the work that we're doing here in the form of a paradigm shift, right? And our paradigm shift, and the bridge for us of this paradigm shift, is Black political economy, what I studied using the work of my mentor, Lloyd Hogan. And so that bridge, right, is a bridge from economics of scarcity to economic abundance with Black political economy in between being the bridge, meaning that, like what would be the solution from my perspective to the socioeconomic condition, the poverty, the economic poverty, even the social and the emotional. And there's a lot of anxiety in our community, right? So what is the solution? The solution is wealth, right? Emotional wealth, financial wealth, or actually even further, right? It's health, right? Financial health, right? Emotional health, right? Physical health, right? And being able to sustain an income in this realm. So that's kind of where I'm at, right? This a strong economic theory, paradigm shift, in the work that we're doing. I feel, right, and the people that I'm working with right now, this seventh generation, where you were probably around the second, right? We're doing some really good stuff. We ran a few events out of here. I got this is the journal we use right here. It's the Journal of Economic and Spiritual Man workbook. All right. And this is the workbook that has the magic. It has the alchemy in it.
Wow, good stuff. I mean, it's funny because on this podcast, we've talked about paradigms and we've talked about all of that stuff you talked about, but we talked about it mainly from a sense of individualism, how we can individually become who we need to be wealthy for our communities and things like that and be free, where we don't have to depend on, a job. We don't have to depend on a paycheck. We don't have to depend on the government because we can kind of be our own economy. But I love what you're talking about. It takes it to another level of not how can I, but how can we as a community, how can we socially, like as a village, so to speak, how can we all become lifted up together? So, maybe you can expound on that. Like, why is it important for people to understand economics and business and money so that it's not just that one person can be affected, but a whole community can be affected, especially the urban community or the community that lack the most? How can we uplift those communities, in your opinion?
So again, I spent a career with that as part of my mantra. Like early days of my life, right? I carried the world on my shoulders, right? I wanted to serve, right? When I first came to Buffalo, it's kind of like, yo, I'm here to serve, But what I realized is that, people want servants, right? They're like, oh, you want to serve? Oh, we got this, we got this, we got that. And right, and it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm here to serve. I'm carrying buckets, right? And then I'm carrying a big stick and I'm carrying the buckets. I'm like, oh man, this stuff is getting too heavy for me, right? But I still want to serve. And then what I realized to serve is that, I probably the best way to serve is to figure out how to build a pipeline, right? And then also, right, it's like I spent a lot of time, my life, especially my youth, right, with the idea of trying to teach, like consider this or consider that, right? But now I'm maybe it's my I'm my age right now is kind of like I'm okay. I'm supposed to be the old wise one, right? So I'm kind of like, okay, I'm not gonna, like you, Eddie Bales, right? I'm not gonna try to get you to believe anything that I believe, right? I'm not even gonna try to, right? I'm just gonna speak my truth, right? And if my truth resonates with you, that it'll be clear, and it won't. And the resonation of my truth to you won't necessarily come from the words, right? The words may stimulate it, but you're going to feel the vibration, right? And I think that's the solution. It's like I really, in the 80s and the 90s, like I saw those revolutions, right? I saw the revolutions taking place in Africa. I saw the revolutions taking place in Latin America, right? I saw the revolutions, the Panthers and that, the young lawyers take, here in the United States, right? And even the work that we did, right? But ultimately, it's kind of like, like you and I could have a conversation, right? But it's kind of, I remember working with you remember Eric Eves, right? He brought in a speaker, and he was talking about, like, I think I can't remember what the triangle was, but it had to do with communication and business, right? And it was kind of like, it was like on one edge you had communication to your team, on another edge you had technical know-how, and on the bottom you had communication, like communication to your God, right? And that what we realized, what I realized is that that internal conversation is significantly more powerful than any conversation. Even my conversation with you, Mr. Bales, right? My internal conversation, right? How I see myself, my self-image, right? How I walk the planet, right? Where my thoughts, are my thoughts around my vision, my goals, my dreams, my desires, my aspirations? Are they disjointed? And if they're disjointed, I've got to bring them back, irrespective. I mean, Jesus did this. Jesus, like, look, you guys can be tripping, but I'm gonna still walk in love. No matter what you do, however you interact with me, right? I'm not going to be distracted from walking in love, right? And that was a great lesson, and that's one of the lessons that I'm trying to follow too, right? That as things enter into my life, right, I'm not going to get distracted. I got my goals, I have my dreams, I have my goals, I have my aspirations, and they're all connected to ascending life for one and for all, right? Do unto others as I would have them do unto me, right? One of the things we talk around here at the academy, we talk about train, love training.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I mean, you've had such a vast. I didn't know you were in England, born in England, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but it makes sense because I mean, even before we hopped on here, even just your music. I mean, I love it though. Like I love the vastness that you have when it comes to history and all the experiences, and that's what people need too. Is they need to experience more so that they can become more. Because
Yeah.
when you have a perspective like you have, it's easy for you to say, okay, I can see where this can improve, and I can see why this should improve because I've seen it in different areas. I've seen different countries, and I've been able to travel. So, you really made a huge impact, more than you know. And it's just crazy that we're talking 20 years later.
Well, I mean, at some point, maybe we could do a new collaborative, because I'd like to introduce you to some of the people who are in our lives right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely love that for sure. Well, we've talked about a lot here. I don't want to belabor the time, but one of the things that this podcast is about is freedom, and you got to have a investing and you have to have a basic understanding of economics and investing in order to live that life of freedom. You can be an entrepreneur, but if you don't understand the economics of it, if you don't understand the investing side of things, then and how can you grow into that freedom? So, why do you feel that having a basic understanding of economics is important for code to freedom?
You know what? I'm laughing, right? Because, the truth is, I'm a reformed economist. Honestly, I don't think that the kind of economics that you and I are taught, right? I mean, again, the kind of economics that really attracted your attention was the kind that you and I spoke with, right? But mainstream microeconomics, right? That economics of scarcity, right? It was scarcity based. Right. Matter of fact, what I would tell your audience is that, no, you need to check out what we're doing here at the Academy, right? Here at the Academy, right, our mantra is cheaper than Netflix, more valuable than a college education. Right. And what we mean by that, and again, I think it fits right down your alley, right, is what we're saying is that not saying that a college education is not valuable. Matter of fact, we agree that it is very valuable, right? In my opinion, college education should be treated as grades 13 through 16, and it should be free, just like grades 9 through 12 or elementary school, right? Because we're going to be generally we're living longer, right? But the college education is a scholastic education. It's a liberal arts education. It's not a professional education. It's not a personal finance education. It doesn't teach you about income, expenses, assets, and liabilities. right? It doesn't teach you about multiple streams of income and the significance of being aware of multiple streams of income in the 21st century. You don't learn those things in traditional economics. And traditional economics is very selfish, right? I mean, the era, like I grew up, I'm quite sure, my mom and dad, they were civil rights people, right? They grew, I was a kid in the 60s, the love time period, right? And I remember clearly in 1980 when Reagan became president, and his theory of supply side economics and trickled down, was that it switched from we to love to like, hey, yo, it's all about the Benjamin, it's all about me, forget you, right? It became very, very selfish, right? And that was in the 1980s. And the idea was, we're going to cut back on the taxes, right? And we're going to allow, taxes are oppressive, right? And we're going to allow, people to make money, right? But what it ended up happening is that, a lot of the between economic policies and what have you, I mean, there's a huge amount of wealth that trickled up. It didn't trickle down, right? So that the disparities like people are talking about the K recovery, right? That if you own assets, right, you made a killing, right? But most working class people don't own assets, right? The wages from the 90s to in real terms, right? They haven't changed much, right? Even though prices have gone up, and if you did own some assets, maybe you did a little bit better, right? But it hasn't really changed. I mean, working class, Main Street is definitely hasn't done as well as Wall Street. But we still got to put food on the table, right? And so going back to the question of economics, right? Well, I honestly, I'm going to come hard on this one, right? The kind of economics that's being taught, the neoclassical economics, the Keynesian economics, even the Marxian economics of scarcity, right? They don't provide the solution that I feel that our population needs. Not just our population, but the human population. And the thing is that what's happening now, there is a lot of disruption taking place, right? You got Bitcoin disrupting the central bank model. You got Reddit and you have Robinhood disrupting Wall Street, right? And so I would say that the work that I'm doing is a disruptor of mainstream economics, right? So I wouldn't necessarily agree that your constituents should be studying mainstream economics, right? I really believe that the economics that is called economics, I mean, the analytics of it and being analytical and thinking scientifically, that's very, very valuable, right? But to assume that from the get-go, if you're a businessman, your goal is to maximize profits instead of making the world a better place, that's not the correct goal for me, right? No, the right goal from my perspective is identify, what you're good at, right? Identify what you like to do, right? Identify what the world needs and see if you could align those things, what you're good at, what you like to do, and what the world needs. And then identify how to make some money. You doing that, right? So the framework is different, right? So, so I'm just going to make my little plug for the Academy. Right. If for your audience here, if you want to get in contact with the Academy, we are at cigbuffalo@gmail.com. CIG is for Conscious Investment Group, right? cigbuffalo@gmail.com. And again, our mantra is cheaper than Netflix and more valuable than a college education. And what that means is that what we're offering, right, for $12.99 is an opportunity. You are in the savings circle. Well, we're offering a 21st century savings circle. And so of that $12.99, $7 of that $12.99 is going to go into a savings circle in your name, right? And we're going to hold that money in Bitcoin. Right? We're going to hold it in Bitcoin, and we're going to offer up to a 10% return on that $7 over a 12-month time period. So that in a 12-month time period, that's about $84. 10% of that would bring it up into the low 90s, and that money would belong to you, assuming that Bitcoin generates a capital gain, right? And that's the financial piece. Another financial piece is of that 1299. We have the alumni fund, right? And we provide scholarships to some of our people who are associated with it, with what we call the nexus of cooperative and cooperating institutions and spiritually orientated entrepreneurs, right? And so right from the get-go, we offer an opportunity to tithe and be a philanthropist. And then about the network marketing piece. We offer what we call prospect mining. Is that if you do the recruitment, you have an opportunity to get $1 out of that in the form of cash flow, right? So right from the very get-go, right, you're going to learn about capital gains, and we'll teach. And then the financial literacy piece is that we will give you an opportunity to participate in our mastermind calendar, right? So what we're doing is we're masterminding, right? We're masterminding what we call spiritual and temporal advancement. So our calendar, right, is about what we call life wealth and material wealth, right? And the life wealth is, your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Well, healthy in, healthy out, right? In your mind and in your mouth, in your life experiences. But again, like we'll be holding that money in Bitcoin. So we're going to teach you about Bitcoin, right? And why we feel that putting intellectual energy and putting your, you have a choice, right? You probably taught from the richest man in Babylon, right? And in the richest man in Babylon, the goal, one of a tactic is living off of 90% of your income. But what do you do with the 10%? Do you start saving in fiat currency, the US dollar, or you start saving in Bitcoin? Well, we believe that, we'll teach you what Bitcoin is, right? We'll teach you about cryptocurrencies. We'll teach you about blockchain. And when we say teach you, right? No, it's not really teach, right? Because that's not really my style. We'll mastermind. We'll work together, right? We'll bring all these minds together and create a bigger mind to respond to what we feel is the cutting edge. Again, the cutting edge is shifting economics from the production and distribution of goods and services to the human being. Who do we become in the process while we live on the planet for these 100 years, 100-year lifestyle, right? I teach a lot of my students that you should seriously consider a 100-year lifestyle. Try to live to triple digits, right? There's a lot of phenomenal stuff happening on this planet. Why shortchange yourself by unhealthy thoughts, unhealthy eating habits, unhealthy drinking habits, right? Try to be around a little bit, right? But if you're going to be around to triple digits, the old style of retiring at 65, well, that's not going to work, right? So if you're going to plan to be around for triple digits, you today, you need to prepare to have income coming in when your body is slowing down a little bit, right? Have those assets built up so that you're not relying on a one-to-one relationship between your labor and your income, right? That your labor goes into your assets and your assets generate the income. So that kind of language, that's the language we talk over here at the Academy, right? Again, a leadership academy and community building economics. And we focus on personal productivity. The Academy is a dojo. This is where people come to polish their spirit, right? We've had a lot of events. We just had a matter of fact, we had the young royalty, right? A chess club. They had an event here. We had about 50, 60 people show up. We had a 420 event, right? Had a comedy show, right? We had a event coming out of the Academy, Bitcoin in the Black community. So we're doing a lot of stuff here. So your audience, before I direct them to study mainstream economics, I direct them towards us. Learn what we're offering something, right? And what you experienced with me, I've leveled up 100x since when you and I dealt with each other.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, things have changed now. It's a totally different lifestyle now. And all the disruptions you talked about are so, so important. And I think that, you know, we have to so on point, because the world is changing and we got to keep up. Matter of fact, we got to stay ahead of it.
Yeah.
I love all the things that you're talking about, and hey, I'd love to see some more information about that as well. So
Okay.
definitely check it out, folks. Check out everything he's talking about. What was that? CIG?
CIGbuffalo@gmail.com.
There you go. There you go. Well, any last word that you want to say to everybody?
Oh man, I'm not sure. I mean, you had me on a roll here, right? No, I think that like staying close to the one principle, right? The primary directive is love, right? And the thing is, it's clear to me that we all have different understandings of what love is, right? But I would guess if we err throughout our lifetimes and stay as close to love as possible throughout our lifetimes, we'll probably find ourselves in a pretty good spot.
I totally agree. Totally agree. Well, it's been a pleasure having you here. I know we'll get together soon, and we'll have you on again, because you have a lot of value to offer and so much knowledge as well, from a macro standpoint of not just one genre, but you can kind of take it to the ego view.
Well, I mean, that's my job. I am an economist, even so I said I'm a reformed economist. My job is to frame the game.
Right.
And I think I've done a good job in framing the game. And now I'm out there sharing what we've created, right? We are operating in the paradigm shift, and we are aligned with the exponential and accelerating growth that's taking place right now. And the framework that we're sharing fits the alignment, right? We can handle that exponential and accelerating growth. As a matter of fact, not only can we handle it, like it could leapfrog us towards the front. Like we have the opportunity to teach the rest of the world, right? What people who've gone through in this 400-year time period, have gone through the trials and tribulations of the Black population, right? And we're still here, and we have something to share with the world. And it's not bitterness, it's not anger. It's like, no, it's love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, it's been a pleasure once again. And thank you so much for joining us.
No doubt. All right. Take care, sir.
Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys for listening. Definitely feel free to take a screenshot of this episode, tag me in it on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you find me on social media. I would love to give you a shout out. Hey, you might even get a prize. Who knows? But excited that you had a chance to take a listen. I hope you got a lot of value. And definitely feel free to give us 5 stars as well as a review. Show us some love, and we appreciate you. God bless you all, and see you all over the top.